What's going on? It's your boy Winslow, and we are. I don't like this intro. All right, what's going on, guys? It's Winslow. It's been a little minute. Well, actually, it hasn't. It depends when you're seeing this, where you're seeing this. If you're seeing this on Patreon, you're seeing this pretty early. If you're watching this on YouTube, just go to Patreon, help your boy out. You'll see these things. It's worth it, I swear. If it's not, you just unsubscribe. No hard feelings. We're good. Anyway, just recently, I was fortunate enough to have a tune out on one of my favorite labels, Must Make. It's called Sweet Tooth. It's part of the Parchment Compilation. Shout out Jack Workforce for having me on. Let me be a part of such a sick project. It's got tunes from myself, Workforce and Break, Envy, Paige Julia, Azzy FM, and Thread. Sick producers. It's sick to be a part of it. And I have this tune on it. So like I do with most of these videos, I'm just going to show you like a little brief overview of how it came together so you can see individual parts and how things fit. And I'm not going to talk about anything really in specifics because this video will be 6 hours long and you don't need to hear me yap. But if you'd like to, there's loads of videos, so check them. All right, so if you haven't heard the tune, go listen to it. The link's in the description. I don't want YouTube to flag me, but I'll play a little bit of it. And that's all you get. Yeah, so what you heard is, a little like laid back, kind of soulful, a bit different going for the, the drum groove. It's a bit wonky. It's got a good feel, but it takes a while to get used to it. From what I've heard, I like it. Don't know how I came up with it, but what happens in an Airbnb in London in the summer 2022 stays there, because that's when I made this. But anyway, let's talk drums. Drum loop by themselves sound like this. Make a little loop. All right, nothing crazy. The rhythm is what's more important. Everything else is kind of like, yeah, there's your think break, there's your snare, there's your clap, whatever. All right, so kick, normal kick stuff. It's the Supermarket 64 kick from a previous track. If you heard that, you know what I'm talking about. Got a little layer to go on top of it. It's actually a snare layer, but on top of the kick, it feels just like a little bit of texture, a little bit of air. A little bit of fuzz on top. Okay. Drum layering. That's all you need. Okay. You want texture, you want character, drum layering. We got snare, clap. I just call it the snare clap, snare clip in this case because I type too fast. It's the same thing the whole time, more or less. A couple of these, like, the taper for like the tail of the samples and stuff is a bit different. So it's like closed clap, like closed hi-hat, but like clap sound. So like short ones, then like psh, that kind of thing. Adds a little bit of interest as the loop progresses. Like it could have been the same thing, but that's all right. But these subtle changes, like closed hats, hi-hats, closed, short claps, longer claps, air, no air, that kind of contrast really helps just add a bit of interest. And so we got like snare from Demagogues, clap from Everything and More. I'm just reusing samples and layering them to get different textures and different sounds. Okay, the snap from Demagogues, and then the claps from Green, Gray, Blue. And those progress. So it's like, it's not the same clap. All different layers, okay? These little textures, you don't pay attention to them when you're listening to the track in full, but they do add that little bit of interest, okay? All together, that's what it sounds like. A little bit of EQ to make them fit, transient shape and that kind of stuff. Same thing, compression makes a bunch of disparate samples sound kind of the same, being put into the same space as, compression has that kind of gluing aspect to it. EQ for shape, more for mixing instead of creating. Same thing, a little bit of stuff. Took some stuff out of the sides because this is a kind of busy mix and I don't need like low, like wide clap, like in the low mids. You know what I mean? If you do, it's cool, but I don't. If you want to know anything in like specific, just let me know in the comments as usual and I'll get to like the specific bits and know that those specific bits are going to go to Patreon first. So do with that information as you will. But I'm a teacher, so I like to teach. So you believe me, you're gonna get your money's worth if you maintain your, normal expectations. If I was full time, maybe. Anyway, let's go to percussion, which is just loops and stuff, which, here we go. The whole thing is kind of built around, like if I play the whole thing, it's pretty much like a repurposed thing break, more or less. Change some samples out, you know, character, but the overall feeling is think break. Okay? You could do all of this, you could do none of this. It's all about what you like. And this is what I like, all right? Then we got this. It's that break. Tiny 66, whatever you want to call it. Hi-hat loop I didn't use. Kind of an open hat to layer on top of the kick. Yeah, only hits when the kick hits. So it's like, you know, where you're doing like little hi-hat chokes and stuff with kicks, as if you're actually playing, okay? I like to keep the realism of a player, but with like heightened like layers and stuff, you know? So it still feels like, it still has a kind of the tropes of what somebody actually playing a drum kit. Maybe tropes isn't the right word, but you know what I mean? And then kind of enhance that with layers and different textures and things to get a more specific sound to me, okay? You might not do any of this. You might do some of it. It's whatever. Different percussion loops here and there. Got like a ride loop later on, which doesn't sound like that. Normal, nice ring modulation, gets that like vinyl, too much bass, you know, the crushing kind of fizzy sound, you know, when something's being overloaded against something else and it's like distortion, but it's pleasing. That's what I tried to go for. Yeah, a couple other samples, like percussion and stuff. This one's like panning back and forth a bit. And another thing, like I work in headphones mainly. I love when things really take advantage of the stereo field. So even though you might not hear this on a mono club system, you know, you're listening at home, you're listening on your earbuds, on your commute. It makes it interesting. You know, it makes it like appealing. Small, subtle things. You might not pick it out while you're hearing the full thing, but if you take it away, you notice it. If it's there, it's all right. You know, if you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
When you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all.
I'm not saying I did anything right. I just thought that was relevant to the comment. Yeah, that's kind of it. There's a bit of processing on the percussion, compression, heavy sidechain by the kick. I wanted the pumping feeling. The clap's not playing. Yeah, just enough for the clap to get through. I want the pumping sound. So it's there, you know. People have their opinions on how you sidechain, whether it's compressors, multiband, volume shaping, drawing in the actual wave or the actual curve and like automation, whatever floats your boat, all right? Anyway, yeah, that's the drums. There's processing fully. There's a lot, but it's all kind of maintenance. It does change the character a bit, but in a way that I want. I do kind of like somewhat heavily compressed drums, heavily compressed within context of my music. You could go further, all right? So if we go with nothing, it sounds like. And I slap everything on. Also, see if you can like get your head to catch the break, all right? Slap everything on, sounds like this. So, to be fair, not much change. Like the timbre's the same, the overall like shape of the sound is more or less the same. You know, I didn't add a ton of high end, a ton of low end, but with all the plugins, it feels more together. It feels like everything's in like the same space, the same room, you know, instead of like claps feel a bit spiky and sharp. This feels over here. This feels that way. It brings it together in a pleasing way to my ears. If we look, starts off with a compressor, right? Let me just mute everything and then we'll go one by one. How about that? So we start with compressor. It's catching the clap and the kick, not doing any more than like 3 dB of compression. Again, we're pulling it together with a slow moderately slow attack, quick release, ratio of 3-to-1. Not much is going on. It's taming the sound, adding a bit of shape, adding a bit of, the glue, but it's not like severely altering the stage. Okay. Then we go next. Got this, one of my favorite plugins, noise. It's adding this little fizz, but rhythmically. And that helps kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. Also adds a bit of texture, and then is further enhanced and like brought into the mix by the plugins after it. Okay. This is like pre a heavy compression saturation kind of deal. I'll show you in a second. But because it's pre it like fills in the gaps, reacting to the compressor. Like if you compress something, let's say like a vocal and a reverb on the same thing. If you compress it really heavily, that vocal comes in really strong, right? But as soon as there's no vocal, the reverb, it like swells. It fills in that gap until the vocals come back in, that it kind of hides behind it. The louder thing wins. That's kind of what is happening here. Like it's a bit of texture as things are kicking in, but in those micro times in between this, the hits and stuff, it just adds a little bit of fill, kind of like what reverb does. There is reverb on these drums. They're going to ascend. Yeah, they actually are. And that send's going in the same drum bus. So the reverb is going to the drum bus all the drums are going to individually. And because like it's all getting squashed together, it's that same thing of like there's space when things are playing, it's clear with a little bit of room sound, but in between and when like the drums stop playing and like the plugins like relax or whatever, it comes in and fills that space in a musically pleasing way. All right. All this is like to sound interesting. It's not necessarily like a technical do this, do that for, it's just like, I like the character. I like the sound it brings. So it's in there. All right. Let's go next plugin. My drums, I like this plugin, Supercharger, nice compression, saturation, and punch. That's what I like. It kind of adds a bit of that like pushing, almost slightly distorted, when you start distorting stuff, saturating, whatever, same thing. Enough, you start to get those harmonics pop out. You start to get a bit of tone. This adds a bit more tone to the kick, but it also adds a bit of crunch and a bit of like dialed in like sizzle edge to the sound. I like it. Not going to harp on that too much. We have Camel Crusher next, which you can't see. But Studio One, I can see all the little parameters here if you look to the left and still use it as a plugin. Sick. A little bit of compression, a little bit of tube, saturation, distortion, nothing crazy to go into. All right. Then we have an EQ, taking out like the sides because I don't need any like low-end reverb that's coming through the sends, some peaks and stuff. This is like maintenance EQ, less about the overall shape of the sound, more about little niggling things that like bother me, frequencies and that. Okay. We go next. Then we got the shaping EQ. It's my favorite one, the MAG EQ, MAG, whatever. Plugin Alliance. If you know any plugin company, they have silly sales like all year. So you could either pay $300 for this EQ, or you could pay like 20 at random parts of the year. You both paid 20. All right. It's worth $20 at least. Yep, that was shaping it. We have Soothe from this high end. Takes out some of that sibilance and some of the artifacts from like the higher percussion for like just a smoother, more, pleasing sounding top end. Soothe is nice. Catch it on sale too. K-Clip. Get rid of some of the, transients without, mushing the sound in the way some things happen. Perceived loudness, perceived power, that kind of thing. Sale. All these plugins catch on sale. And then in this case, I also use the limiter afterwards from Ozone because I just like I like what it does, Only shaving off another like 1 to 2 couple dBs. Again, I'm limiting in stages, clipping limiting in stages. So when I get to the master, I don't have to do much. Okay. Remember, plugins will react to certain things in the audio realm that our ears don't necessarily pick up on. Okay. I'm not going to delve into that simply because I want to keep this video rolling. Remember, specifics, hit me up in the comments. Further videos to follow. That's drums. Bass, not going to spend too much time on. It's the same thing every time. I use the same bass sound. Like, look at any video. Nice harmonic sub from Silent, triangle wave, a little bit of saturation. Yeah. There's another kind of mid-bassy thing from OBXD. It's doing some stuff. Add a little bit of topic, a little character. Doesn't really open up or, yeah, it doesn't do much. But it's all right, subtlety, you know what I mean? Then we have this other synth from the Soft Tube M84. It's already audio and I don't want to deal with going back. Like, it's like, just pick a preset that sounds good. That's all I did. Yeah, if you've heard this sound in a couple other tracks, Orange Cat Rhythms one. Yeah, get to this part, opens up a bit. Meow. All together. It's just different layers doing different things. You know, like the sub is the body, is the foundation. The next one is a little bit of grit, add a little bit of character on the top end, helps poke out like the small speakers and stuff like that, which for drum and bass doesn't really matter, but people will argue it does. You know, those people don't really make, they just, you know, they commentate on things. You know what I mean. They have M80, this one, bit more character, cats talking to me. Yeah, bass bus, a little bit of saturation from Saturn, EQ to kind of shape it a little bit, but not much. Even just turning this EQ on gives me a bit of character. Another EQ, a little bump, a little dip. That's just there for no reason. Kick sidechain. Make space for the kick. Simple enough. There's not a whole lot going on, so I don't really need like another dialed in sidechain, okay? Anyway, yeah, that's basically the bass. And then we have the melodic bits, which if you see are pretty busy. Me, I like to sample. That's what all of these little chops and stuff is. All the chops and stuff are. Use the right one, man. What's this? That was a different like version of the sample I tried to make. Anyway, yeah, so original tune that the sample came from is by an artist named Isla. Tune's called Goddess. I'll make a separate video of diving into how I figured out the sample, the loop, and all that. But we listen to it real quick. I'm going to get flagged. Here's the original sample. And all I did was cut that up kind of and find a loop that worked. I did a little bit of time stretching, but if you really listen, like only the start of the sample kind of starts on time and the little swells and stuff, just, you know, I'll let the cars fall where they may. All right, that's all I did. So let's listen to the loop real quick. Without the filter, genius. So I found a couple cuts. I even found like a little vocal cut further off in the tune, and I put that together. A bit of trial and error, but also like when you're just listening, you kind of get an idea of like what you want. So you kind of form the, at least I do, like form the loop in my head a bit. And then it's like a lot of like cut and pasting and moving stuff around so you can, you know, until it sounds like what's in your head is on the page, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, if we think about the swells, they aren't necessarily in time. They kind of speed up, and that adds a bit of urgency and forward momentum to the tune. I could have like stretched it so it was perfectly in time, but it's just like chord, chord, chord. And as long as the start of that chord is in time, I didn't really care. If we want to go like, oh, how'd you figure out the bass line? Just take the root note that you can hear. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba, and then you get like, ba, 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 and then what do you write in the bass? Yeah, and like whether you can like hear the bass line or you need like a tool to kind of help you, that's one thing. But all this is really doing is like, I'm not like reinventing the wheel here. It's just like, oh, it's playing these chords and this is already in the bass and the actual sound. Let me just recreate that. Easy enough. It's a couple different variations, like ending phrases. Actually, this is different from the original. Yeah, like that one just kind of lingers and finishes a sample instead of cutting. There used to be a vocal there, but I took that out, making the last thing. There's some other, like, I call them Vox stabs, which is just vocals. It's the same sample, but just like chopped up in a way that I can add some of the lyrical content. See, now this side like lined up perfectly, but the way like she performed it didn't necessarily line up on this section, so I just kind of cut words and syllables to fit. Okay, little things. It's nothing crazy, but it's just like, all right, I want something to rhythmically fit together, especially me. Just do that, you know? Yeah, so that's the main sample. If you want a deeper dive into kind of how I like start from scratch and figure it out, there'll be an additional video on Patreon. Link in the description. You know the drill. I'm not going to talk about the plugins that are on this chain. It's more or less EQ and stuff, so it doesn't sound raw. Like the original sample was like a lot fuller. I don't really need. Add all the plugins, changes it tonally, adds a bit of reverb, a bit of space. It makes it fit in this context. That's the fun thing about sampling, is you're taking it from one thing and you're putting it in another. You know, you're changing the context. It's familiar, but it's also like, a little different, you know? Makes your ears perk up and go, how did he do that? Or maybe it doesn't, you know? But anyway. Also, I got to fit it into like a busy drum loop, a full sub, other things going on. Drum and bass is tough if you want to do it well. Yeah, pads and stuff, none of that matters. I really want like kind of like woodwinds and strings kind of feeling at the second drop. So I made it. They pan and a little bit of interest. Kind of was it like a Philip Glass minimalism, kind of like making textures out of short notes that are repeated often is something I wanted to try. So we have the BBC SO, which is the Spitfire, the free one. I'm not going to turn it back to audio because that'll take ages. Yeah, so we got the Oh Boys, which is the oboe. And then we got the Squidwards, which are clarinets. I know, I'm so creative. Put them together. You know, reed, woodwind. They, like, texturally and like most music, they're always kind of layered or playing similar parts. You know, they work together. Same thing here. Strings, Spitfire, Epic or something like that. Strings, one of the cheap libraries, like $30 or something. Strings, similar deal. And it's all following the same kind of chord progression as the main sample. So if we play that, even accenting, the strings are like making a different kind of harmonic feeling. Adding a couple extensions in there, making, you know, major 7th, 9th chords that weren't exactly in the main sample. But because how chords work, and I took a time to figure out the voicing and stuff, it adds a nice character. Like the beginning sounds, it's kind of there. It's like standard. That's home base, right? Second half sounds a bit more relaxed. It has a different feeling because of the harmonic nature that's changed. All the same stuff is still there, but I've added a little bit extra to make it to just change the feel. Notes change feels. Use your extensions, 9th, 11th, 13th, whatever. So that's all working together. It pads the sound. That's what pads are, you know, fills up space. Yeah, and that is the whole tune. Because I'm not going to show you how, like, oh, I wouldn't select this little riser. They went, you know, that doesn't matter. All right. So a couple musical things, like I just talked about, harmonically differentiating the second drop. It's not wildly different. It's the same sample. It's the same thing. But because of those extra voices, those extra instruments, those layers in the arrangement, it has a different feel. So even if it's bare bones the same as the first half, it's not. I add a little bit of seasoning. That's all you need. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, go crazy. Sometimes second drops, you know, call for that. This one didn't. You know, second drop musically, I even added the extra, you know, the Orange Cat rhythm sound. So texturally, we're feeling different. This is feeling in the first half. That filter's not. I got samples playing I don't need. It's a bit subdued and filtered down. Not a lot going on in the bass either. Here, it's like the sky is opened up. It's a bit brighter. It's a bit more lush. That's all you need for a second drop. Yeah. Drums are completely the same. Copy paste. Shout out to being lazy, aka efficient. I haven't been efficient in a while. Anyway, bad jokes. But yeah, once I do this whole thing, you know, mix it down, turn it to audio, stuff like that. I usually print the whole mix, bounce, export, whatever you want to call it. So it exists there. That's the full mix. Then I run it through this bad boy over here. You can't see the analog heat. You see a little window for it. I'm not going to turn it on. Basically, I'm running it through, adding a little bit of drive. It adds a little bit of character. You know, taking anything out of the box and putting it back in adds a character you can't really get from plugins. And then I did make like a quick master for myself before I got the actual master. Shout out Bo at 1087. Anything else? There's some, you know, mixing stuff again, softening the highs a bit. I did a bit of that. It's not gonna make a difference now because I don't have some of the stuff playing. There's the limiter, just so again the volume's up so I can show you what it sounds like, and also to make a quick like self master. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting better at like, it's not really getting better at mastering, but in my mix downs, because now my masters are sounding like pretty similar to like the official ones I'm getting. So I must be on the way. You know, your boy's learning, we're growing, we're developing. That's what this channel is all about. Just, you know, learning. Remember that first video where I didn't know how to talk? And now I'm like just riffing for half an hour straight. Has it been a half an hour? Yep, 33 minutes. Anyway, let's wrap this bad boy up. All right, so that's the whole tune. Again, go check it out. Listen to it. Listen to the whole VA EP with all these sick artists on it. If you want to know anything more specific about certain things, the sampling, maybe some sound design, maybe some drums, and like how to figure out unconventional rhythms and still make them work. Because this is a very unconventional rhythm. But I've been happy to see people putting it in mixes simply for the support and for like it's not like challenging to mix this from a DJ perspective, but it's like, it's not the normal boom, pop, boom, pop. So what do I do? You know, it's easy. You hit play and you line it up. A little nudge, 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 okay? All right. Stupid rant out of the way. Anywho, yeah, Patreon, if you want to throw me some extra support, if you want to get some other learning materials specific to usually drum and bass, but that's not all I make. You just won't know what else I'm making unless you're on Patreon. Shout out to the people who are. You make things like this happen, and some other developments coming later in the year I can't talk about, but there will be signs. Yeah, something I missed, let me know. Easy to reach on the internet, you know how most people are, and I do respond to messages when I have time. And until then, I've been Winslow. I'll keep being me. You be you, and later. I don't know what else to say. I don't have to say anything.